Okay, so hi guys. Today I'm going to talk to you about the pleats. So we'll start with the box pleat. Um, I'm going to show you the pattern on in another tutorial. This one is just to explain to you with fabric. I did like the pattern, but right away on the fabric. If you look at the most basic one, it's a parallel box pleat. So that means you need to add 4 times the same measurement, 4 times the depth you want your pleat to be. So basically, a box pleat it's 2 knife pleat that connects together. That's why you need twice the depth for one and twice the depth for the other one. I wrote press box pleat. When they're pressed, you need to put notches top and bottom to be able to press your fabric. So the way you do it is you press the outside of the pleat and the outside of the pleat, and it's easy after just to put them notch to notch on the middle one, and you get the bottom pleat. Press pleat are like that. So always for box pleat, 3 notch on top, 3 notch at the bottom for the press one. If you want to do a box pleat but you don't want it to be pressed, you want it soft, so the technique is the same. 4 times the depth of your pleat, 2 knife pleat that are opposite direction for the soft box pleat, but this time you put the notch just on top because you don't want no one to go and press it, so you don't put the reference. This is giving you the box pleat parallel but soft. It gives you volume at the bottom. Compared to the press one, that remains pretty much the same. The soft one is going to give you volume. There's another kind of box pleat you might want to do. It's the box pleat to knotting. So you're not opening parallel this time, you're really opening your pattern to knotting at one point. I did to the bottom this time, but it could be to the side seam or to the center front, depending where you have a seam. Of course, it has to be done where you have a seam or the end of the garment. The idea is the same. You need 4 times the depth of your pleat, at least on top, nothing there. And in that case also, usually you don't want to press it, but even if you wanted to press it, the difference would be a notch at the bottom for the direction. But like I said, usually you don't want to press it, so the only thing you need are the 3 notches on top. That gives you a box pleat but to nothing at the bottom, so no volume added. Again, if we take a look, this one doesn't give you any flare. These are called box pleat, but if you do research on the net, you'll see that they don't really agree on the term used. I call this one box because, let's say, it is like a box over here. The other pleat you could do with the same pattern is reverse your process when you fold, reverse your fabric. Instead of doing your pleat on the right side, you're doing them on the wrong side. So on the right side of the fabric, you get the inverted box pleat. That's something you could see also. For the 3 pleat that I showed you before, you could use the inverted box pleat. Same notches, same everything. The only thing is you do the work on the wrong side. So this is pretty much the basic of the inverted pleat, but you might want to do a little different. So I prepare here 2 different ones. So from the outside they look the same, inverted or box pleat, box pleat. But if you look at the inside, the development could be different. Let's say you don't want too much fabric at the waist in your pleat. You could put different measurement top and bottom, but the important is that on top you have 4 times the same measurement, and at the bottom 4 times the same measurement. In that case, I decide to have it pressed, so I have my 3-notch top and 3-notch bottom. Remember, 4 times the depth of your pleat. So that would be for a non-parallel pleat. The next one would be if you want to use a different fabric for the back of the pleat. So when it opens a bit, you see a different fabric. So the technique in pattern I will show you in another tutorial, but just to show you the look and where we place the seam, it's always the same idea, the same amount of fabric that you're adding, but this time 1, 2, 3, and 4. The two center distance are a separate piece. That's the difference. And you notice I did my notch in the middle, so it's still 3 notches, 1, 2, and 3. But right after the first depth of the pleat, I cut my pattern, had seam allowance. Same thing on the other side, I cut. So it's 4 times the depth of the pleat, but the middle 2 piece, the middle 2 space are in another fabric. That could be another variation you could do. And I'm not going to stop there. I have more option for you. Let's say you have a very thick fabric, or because of the style you really want a top stitch, or for thick fabric, you could decide to do your box pleat, exactly the same that I showed you before, but this one for usually more for thick fabric. You're going to decide which level you want the fabric or all the thickness to start, and we'll manage to eliminate all these layers. We'll manage to eliminate them. So on your pattern, you'll do the same that I did on my fabric. You're going to design or a point or a triangle or a straight line, you decide, and you're going to go with the tracing wheel, mark them on the other layers. So that's what you get. And then I put my seam allowance, and I also put my seam allowance right at the pleat line. And I wait for you to see what happened when we take off this part. So all that fabric, you're not going to have it anymore at the waist of your skirt. So you take off this much, and if you notice, you just have your seam allowance there, little seam allowance. So for the sewing, what you do is you put them together and you just assemble at your seam allowance, 1 centimeter or ½ inch, whatever you have. In that case, I didn't put no notch at all because the seam itself is my indication, and I have a point there, so I don't need nothing else. And so it's sewn until your point, and then after you have your fabric, but on top it's only a seam. And of course, to attach them so we don't see inside, from the top you're going to go do your top stitch with the shape that you decide. And you have your big full box pleat without the thickness. So I did another one with the straight line, but it would be exactly the same thing, 4 times the depth. In that case, I don't need the 2 first notch because it's your seam allowance, but I did put one in the middle as a reference because it's a straight line. So when you cut, assembling would be just that easy. And then you need, if I turn it around, you need your reference, the notch, to center with your seam. After this is done, then you could go and stitch right on your style line to make sure we cannot go inside the garment. The bottom notch, it's up to you. If it's a soft pleat, nothing. If you have a press pleat, then your 3 notch are necessary, middle one and one on each side. So that's about it for the box pleat or inverted pleat. These one, they cannot be inverted, but all the other one, yes. Obviously this one, if you turn it, you see all seam allowance, not really nice. The other one, yes. This is a simple knife pleat. The technique is to add fabric like twice the depth you want the pleat to be. The rule for the notch, if you want it pressed, 2 notch on top, 2 notch at the bottom, that means a knife pleat, a press knife pleat. And right here you have a soft knife pleat, so only 2 notch on top, because this one is going to stay open and it's going to give you volume. So you see it's staying open, and the other one is more closed, not completely for sure, but and the last one, it's a knife pleat to knotting. So you could also do that by adding twice the depth of the pleat on top, but knotting at the bottom or on the side seam. So again, this is usually not pressed all the way. You should stop somewhere, so it could be pressed for a little while, and that's it. So this is for the knife pleat. I did a little sample for the tuck because it's still a pleat, but this is a usually smaller. It's a knife pleat, much smaller, and the difference is that it's sewn all the way down. So to make your pattern, it's the same technique as the knife pleat. You need to add twice the measurement, the depth of your pleat. This time it's outside, so twice the measurement. And if you want it to be sewn all the way down, you have to put your notch top and bottom. If you want to sew it just for a while, you could also put the notch top and bottom and give a measurement to your stitch. You say, I want it sewn for 12 centimeters, for example, but it's much easier if you have the reference top and bottom for the folding, and then you could sew it. They're usually smaller. This is even a big tuck. It could be like 3 millimeters, 1/8 of an inch. It's big enough. They could be multiple on your pattern. If you want to be creative with your pleat, you could also do the horizontal. I'll do a special tutorial for this one, but it was just to give you an idea that sometimes you could be creative, give volume, give flair with horizontal pleat. So you want flare, vertical flare if you want, but you're going to do a horizontal pleat, and it's going to give you the flare. So this is just a half scale sample. I'll give you a tutorial for this one separately. I hope you enjoy, and see you again next time.